Good evening from Rimini and welcome to the meeting 2021 from Enrico Castelli and Massimo Bernardini. Today the title is The Works to Come. So we are looking forward to the future, and the future has already started actually because the pandemic somehow accelerated some processes that were already taking place. So we'll talk about agriculture, about how the job is changing in the future. We will focus on some cybersecurity aspects, and we'd like to focus on these topics and ask some questions because, of course, we don't have immediate answers for every question. What are the challenges of the future? What will be the know-how and the skills for the future? And what will be the quality of the work for the future? So are we ready for these changes? These are the topics on which we will focus, and there will be also a debate with two protagonists that we will see later on. So let me first of all connect with Professor Sabina Nuti, Dean of the Sant'Anna School of Pisa, one of the excellencies of our university. Good evening. Thanks for your invitation. Roberto Tomasi, CEO of Autostrade per l'Italia. Good evening. Mario Mezzanzanica, professor of the University of Milano, the Bicocca University. So, starting from your relationships, I would like to share with you a table showing how the needs of the companies are changing with respect to the professional aspect. So here it is, the table. So Professor Mezzanzanica, if I'm not mistaken, as we see here at the top of this list, we can see digital jobs. But one thing is very important, because if we see here insurance employees, social assistant, and then other jobs on the bottom, what does this mean here? For example, the cashier, we see that on the bottom of the table. Well, it means that every job is changing, actually. We focused on the skills that were required over the last few years, over the last 5 years, and we saw that digital jobs, of course, are going through a huge change, but at the same time, also all other jobs, as the ones like the one that you just mentioned, are significantly changing in terms of needs and demand from the companies. And what is leading this change is actually the demand linked to the so-called soft skills or character skills, as we already said during these days. So the responsibility, being able to adapt to the changes, being able to assist and support the customers, and also digital skills. And it's more and more important to learn how to cope with digital tools that can help people innovate and improve their job. So let's start with the first part of the interview that I mentioned at the beginning. So it's a very interesting interview. Luciano Violante, President Emeritus of the Chamber of Deputies, played the role of the journalist in this interview, and he interviewed Roberto Cingolani, who is the Minister for Ecological Transition, and that for 15 years he was director of the Institute of Technology in Genoa, one of the most advanced points of reference for scientific research in Italy. So they explain us what is happening in the world. So our time is the time of technology, which is present, always present in our life. And on the other side, there is this fear, this concern to lose the classical features and aspects of our culture. And the third point is, how can people, young people and family, understand what is actually needed for the future? What's your opinion about that? Well, today it's more and more said that the majority of the work that will take place in 40 years, we don't know them. So it's a real effort to look at the future, and it's very challenging. The World Economic Forum 2 or 3 years ago carried out a very detailed analysis with the most important companies all over the world, asking them which were the main limits for the development, and every company agreed by about 65%, that the main limit was not being able to understand the irreversible, non-reversible changes that were happening. And that's a paradox, because many of these companies are responsible for these changes. So here you need to think about that. Maybe craftsmen will still remain, will still be present, because the non-routine work jobs, so for example, architects or engineers, will always be present. So basically where there is the value of the individual, right? Yes, where the artificial intelligence would be too expensive in order to be able to be affordable, because a plumber, for example, will always be cheaper than a robot in order to solve a problem in your bathroom, for example. So we're not talking about going to Mars with the robots. And then some routine jobs will disappear, manual and intellectual jobs will disappear. And we are talking about a lot of jobs, if we talk about Europe, which are not actually replaced, but there will be new needs. For example, the storage manager. What is the storage manager? Well, let's think about, for example, the need of managing different clouds, different memory systems, different contexts. So let's think about the manager, for example, of integrated management of energy. In the network, you have different kind of energy sources, renewable sources, gases, and with different features. So this profile, this job does not exist today, and we need to invent that. Imagine, for example, engineers for new generation material. Maybe we will be able to create and develop human organs with the 3D printing technologies. So new generation technologies. These things do not exist today, and they need to be created. And also the training education system is not ready to train people for that. Well, Minister Cingolani is saying that today we still don't know many of the future jobs. So because of the speed of the present technology, so how is the university organizing itself in order to cope with this situation? Well, I think that the university needs to face this challenge, this very challenging moment, because till today the university was mainly focused on the concept of separated know-hows and knowledges. So with very clear and detailed scientific worlds where there is a community of professors and teachers going through this process. This way of moving and facing to the future is a very old-fashioned way, which is not actually looking to the future. And if we want to be ready to imagine the jobs that are not present today, we need to be more creative. We need to be able to listen and to understand different interactions that can go ahead with the different sides and features of the university. So I think the university world should really change the way it approaches the education system. It's still too linked to the knowledge of people teaching and not very much focused on the learning process of students, actually. So I really think that we need to make a step forward, and I think that the PNRR should support us to face these challenges, basing our approach on research area and no longer only on disciplines, on different topics. Because otherwise we're going to go through the wrong process, in my opinion. Thank you very much. So it's a very challenging moment for the university, but also for companies. Roberto Tomasi, after the disaster of the Morandi Bridge, the Autostrade group is now working hard in order to recover. This is one of a very important company in our country. 3,000 kilometers of highways, more than 9,000 employees working in your company. So how are you dealing with this challenge? Well, as you said, it's very challenging for us because our company is one of dealing with one of the most complex infrastructures all over the world. In terms of tunnels, for example, we come immediately behind China, for example. We are managing a very complex infrastructure. We are changing our company, and we are starting from a condition that we can define as a mistake, because if you realize then that you made a mistake, you have an opportunity to rethink your future, because this is fundamental for the survival of the company. Our company is not only dealing and managing the infrastructures, but we are also developing new, very complex infrastructures. And this is not only this doesn't mean only relying on the knowledge, but it means also investing on the knowledge, and they need to spread this knowledge. We invested on the Movian company, which is a company playing on the digitalization of the information, which is for us a very important company, playing a key role, which is a strategic part of the journey, not only talking about the highway journey, but about the general process. So we believe that it's very important to work in this context. And we created also another company, which is Free2X, which manages the relationship with the customers, and it allows the journeys to be sustainable, because sustainability and digitalization are the two key points. But in order to be able to do that, you need to rely on a very huge know-how, a huge knowledge, and you need to rely on new skills as well. So you need to preserve the existing skills, but you need new ones as well. So the new skills are the needed aspect in order to be able to imagine what will happen. Because if we think about the situation 2 years ago, we would have never imagined that we would have become so different from 2 years ago. So let's imagine how we can become in 2 years' time, for example. Let's now go ahead with our path. After what happened in the region last year, it's more and more evident the fact that it's important to specialize in the so-called cybersecurity. That's to say, one of the aspects that allows us to live in a safe way, the data transmission. So working in analyzing what is happening in the Leonardo society, this is one of the most advanced technological companies. Everyone can be a target in terms of cybersecurity. We can see what are the most fragile aspects. That's the global aspect. Investing in infrastructure is not enough. Fighting against IT pirates, digitalization plays a key role. In Leonardo, we work with education and training our operators mainly, because the threat continuously changes and we need to be continuously updated in order to be able to face these new techniques of attack. Leonardo is one of the leading company in the safety and cybersecurity. We are here in Chieti in this excellence of cybersecurity to talk with Mr. Sebastiani about training, education, and cybersecurity. We invest a lot with our technologies, and we created platforms for cyber trainers. So the cyber trainer in this case is a platform that allows you to have customized paths for different operators working with the cybersecurity, while the cyber range is a platform that virtually creates real scenarios in order to generate attacks and train the operators. Here we continuously work because the strategies of hackers are continuously evolving. Data protection is not the only goal of Leonardo. Leonardo is not only training on cybersecurity, but also on other fields, so safety, defense, and space. And we are international leaders in training and military services for pilots, maintenance people, and instructors. Our goal is also to develop a scientific culture in the citizenship. One of the main pillars of the sustainability plan of Leonardo is the development and promotion of scientific culture in order to increase the value of the company, but also for the context in which we work. And it's playing a key role in our strategic plan for the future. So far, we involved 37,000 students in Italy and in the US, and some Italian institutes with the crowdfunding project Leonardo for School. This involves young people and adult people. Well, platforms for highways, platforms for cybersecurity. Professor Mezzanzanica, you are studying the changes in the labor market like these ones. Your research laboratory analyzed the web and how the jobs are promoted. So how are these trends changing? Let me start by talking about some data. First of all, we analyzed 270 jobs. With 2,600,000 job ads in Italy. And that's very interesting because we tried to understand how over the 5 years the needed skills have changed for these jobs. And the very interesting aspect is to create the conditions in order to understand this change, which were very important for everybody. We start from an index starting from a minimum of 14% up to 100%, as we saw with the first slide earlier. So what are the key elements or the families or the competence groups, the skill groups that are leading this change? Because 5 years are a very short period in order to see such important changes. And the main aspects are basically two. Digital on the one side, which is changing all jobs with all the different features that the digital world can involve. So, for example, the skill to use a computer or being able to read data and so on, and the so-called soft skill or personal skills, so adapting to the change, creativity, responsibility. These are skills which play more and more an important role for the companies in order to choose their employees and to hire people. To quickly sum up, the most important thing, in my opinion, is that this is a very challenging situation for the future training, because we don't know what will be the jobs in the future. Of course, there are new jobs being creating, like cloud computing or data scientists and many other activities in the digital world, or, as we just saw, also, the most traditional jobs, like the cashier, are changing and they are evolving. So if these two drivers will play more and more an important role, so digital skill and the culture of digital skills, well, this means that companies are looking for more and more different individuals being more and more able to adapt to the change. And the speed of this change is what today features the labor market. And this is a real challenge for everybody, for the institutions, either public or private institutions working for the labor market, but also for the training bodies, universities, and so on. Well, what you are saying now is confirmed by the interview that we had from Max Siegemann, which is the CEO of Burning Blast in Boston, a company studying the evolution of the job ads on the web. Why is that interesting in this case to look at the US? Let's see the video.
Already seeing enormous change.
La pandemia.
Well, the pandemic arrived in a period in which the labor market was already changing. So the question is the pandemic leading the change for the labor market, or will this trend continue? Well, the answer is basically in the middle. And of course, it's important to see that the gap of knowledge and skills is very important, and it's important to know the specific skills of everybody. For example, the skills that are needed for IT people changed by 40% over the last 10 years. Other jobs like hairdressers, for example, didn't change, and pandemics seems to have speed up this process in some areas. And it's important to understand where the change is taking place if we want to find an answer. The most rapid evolving jobs are the so-called hybrid jobs, so basically mixing different skills. Let's think about app developers, for example. This is a job that didn't exist before the invention of the smartphone. These people shall have skills of marketing or designing skills. Or, for example, let's think about a commercial director. They need to know how to manage data, scientific data, and many different skills. So there's no traditional training process that can train these people, actually. If I had to find a factor that is leading to the change in the labor market over the last 10 years, I would like to say the market digitalization, the way the digitalization is changing the word, the word of the labor world. And it's very clear if we see how it's changing the existing job. 8 jobs out of 10 require at least a minimum level of digitalization. And that's very important to be kept in mind, especially if we focus on sustainable jobs. Digitalization is a real challenge, and we need to support workers to be able to adapt to these changes. A sustainable economy needs an updating of the skills and the renewal of the skills as well. So some workers will be fired because of their lack of skills, and they need to be requalified. So it's very important to consider this aspect. And every work, every job has its own main features. So there will be more and more traditional jobs which will be involved in the sustainable economy, and people more and more looking for these jobs. So they will need to be trained on specific features, on specific topics. Let's think about mechanical engineers. They will be present on the automotive industry. But since we are moving towards the e-cars, these engineers will need new skills, new knowledges. For example, Tesla engineers are doing a different jobs than the General Motors engineers, for example. And we can see this evolution towards an hybrid knowledge. And another aspect to be considered is that we're not talking only about technical jobs. There are huge opportunities also in terms of solar plants, for example. So the final question for sustainable jobs is the same that we need to ask about digital jobs. Are we investing on the right training? This will mean being successful or not in the adaptation to changes. Are we investing on the right training, in the right direction? Well, we can do much more than that, in my opinion. I don't want to be pessimistic. Can you please repeat your answer? Well, I believe that we shall do much more than that, because I believe that this ability to adapt can be trained with young people only if we rely on new teaching methods. We are very good at providing basic skills, sharing the so-called knowledges and know-hows. For example, I think about our mechanical engineers, which are very well recognized at the global level, but in order to face the new challenges, we need to teach them how to be flexible, how to know how to listen and to understand what's happening in the world surrounding them. So how can we teach these skills? I think we shall provide them a series of opportunities in different fields also, from their basic knowledges, especially during the first part of their training process, in order to improve their flexibility. I'm thinking about the Sant'Anna school in Pisa, where over the last few years, students at the third or the fourth year are invited to take part in the project Merit and Social Mobility, where they have to focus on other students and support other students. So they're doing something completely different that we define that the integration training. And many of these students told me that at the end of this process, this experience that they lived, where they can see very different social contexts, really explains them what it means to grow in a different context from what they are actually studying. And this experience became a fundamental part of their growth, which actually made the difference for them. So this is just an example, but I think that we should understand what can make a young student very specialized, because we need to rely on very strong skills and being able to adapt and acquire that knowledge which can focus on the changes that will come. Mr. Tomasi, if this is a challenge for the university, so 18, 25 years old students, I can just imagine what this challenge can be for a group like yours, a company like yours, which is dealing with a different age, of course. Well, it's a very complex question, of course. Let me just name a few figures. We just hired 1,700 people over the last 2 years. So let's consider our company relies on about 9,000 employees. And in the period 2021 and 2023, we are planning to hire 2,900 people more. So we have a very strong internal process, and a project for accounting for 100 million euros. So we will transform and change our company completely from a digital point of view. So it's a completely different dimension because the people working in our company will have to change their job. There's no way to think they can keep on doing the same job they're doing right now, today. So it's a very complex context. We have young people joining our company that immediately need to be tested. And I really believe on the continuous knowledge and continuous training, because it's not a goal that you achieve once you finish the university. And that's why we are collaborating with the most important university at the national level in order to have this real exchange of know-how between the labor market and the university world. And education and training should be a continuous path, because I think that the history of our country is made of excellencies, and the moments in which our country grew were when there were this concentration of knowledges and know-how. So we really hope we will be the leaders and the pioneers for this new stage in our country.
So those who are looking at the future, they are getting organized, they study, they try to find new solutions, and they are looking for that also in very traditional services. It's quite fascinating to discover how young people taking the courage to say I, as the title of the meeting goes this year, how to find new solutions for agriculture, which is something that is very old, actually. This apprenticeship, this app allows me to be in contact with my animals and the situation every moment. And this was very important when I was at university, because when I was at university in Milan, I could see what was happening in my company. And of course, I'm always thinking of these animals because they are my family. We are in Subsidiarity in the province of Como, and this is the technological farm of Martina. Martina is 26, and it's Cascina Martina. I lost my father when I was 16, and I grew up here, and this is where I want to grow my children. My father was a very smart person and was a step forward to the others. And in fact, we had a robot to milk the cows. And with the app, we could monitor the animals. We could also monitor the labor room for our animals. And with this one, we could detect the labor moment, because it's essential. It's fundamental that everything goes in the right way. And you can see we're missing, we have few months. We have more or less 5 or 6 new cows, and they produce milk, eggs, vegetables, and they are given then sold to different other customers in the area. And this is the agricultural tradition going on. We've been working for the last 10 years, and it's a big result. If my husband was here, he would be very happy of the results. The love for the animals was given to me by my father, who was a vet. So I think that this is going to be my future. Aquaponic is putting together 2 systems. One side growing fish in water and then using the water for agriculture. So plants absorb the material given by fish in water. And this is the farm that we have in the province of Treviso. And we have this young person, Mr. Moretto, who is the only one producing herbs and other fruit. And this is a system that is not widespread in Italy. And the uniqueness of this system is putting together a heating system that is sustainable, which is thermocompost, together with the hydroponic system. And this production system is the design so that each single component, so the containers of the fish and the plants can be independent. So by means of these valves, I can bypass a part of the installation and do the maintenance of one part without stopping the other. So we use the fish for the elements for the plants. At the same time, the plants are cleaning the water for fishes. So as you can see, plants are put on this area, in this system, and these are floating on water. And roots are developed in water so that they take nutrients from water and cleaning water for fish. And this system is very interesting because this is kind of a vegetable yard that can be composed and changed so that we can optimize the production. So if you look, for example, on this part, the horizontal part, we can have it also in vertical part. This farm was created so that we could see whether the system was sustainable also for small farms where we have family-owned companies, and that could be adapted to other type of cultures.
Io ringrazio la collega Simona Gallo.
I would like to thank our colleague, Mrs. Gallo, because I had no idea that we had the vegetable garden that could be recomposed. I would like to start with Mr. Mezzanzanica. You were talking about widespread knowledge, which is difficult to understand if we apply it to the digitalization of the cows and the tomatoes. So, Siegelman said that sustainability is a double challenge, updating and remodeling of skills. And we have seen some examples. I think this is the challenge. I think in the small size as well in the big size. I think these are emblematic because here we can see how to integrate knowledge, update knowledge over time, and create innovation. As Mrs. Nuti said, adapting knowledge that are taught at university, how they can be applied into a company. Once you enter a company, then the challenge there is still open. We have two factors. There are typical of the situation, because Simon said there are several differences. For sure, we have young people that need to grow into their skills. They need to develop an experience during their studies to understand what it means to go to work. So let's say that they have to go through an upskilling path. And we have just seen the new systems that are advanced. And then we need the senior employees. We need to reskill, re-update their skills so that they can face challenges with the change of their jobs. Because there are some characteristics in some jobs that need to be changed, and therefore we need employees to be retrained and reskilled. And I think that we have some graduates in the two videos. I think that the girl was talking about her father, who was a vet, and therefore I think that she had some skills and she was studying university. And also the young student as well, who had a farm. I think they are all they are coming from the university. So what is the university doing in this sense? I think that the two people you interviewed are for sure graduated. The first one said that when she was at university, she was using apps to see what was happening at home. And the second, due to his competence and the way he was able to explain his experience, I think is a graduate student. So how can we increase the number of graduate students that somehow can really add this dose of creativity and innovation, even in the simplest jobs? What I would like to underline is the digitalization aspect. We often say that we need more people, more computer scientists, more computer science engineers, but we actually need to take this information into all of the other knowledge. A graduate in law, what are they studying about in digitalization? An economist is someone who graduates from the agricultural sciences. So we need to get organized so that these students can get in contact with these fundamental issues. Another thing, it's a second example, the influence of digitalization in agriculture. So these entrepreneurial ideas where we have different experiences, we can actually realize this only if we have opportunities of exchange starting from their studies at university. In the past, we used to have the faculties, now we have departments, and students are not really, let's say, working side by side with other students coming from other departments. So we need to organize more occasions and opportunities to exchange experiences between students of different departments. So is a big company attracted by this kind of experiences? For example, a company that is making bridges, manufacturing bridges or tunnels. What do you think? Let's say with a little bit of imagination, maybe we could find some kind of collaboration. I can see that from the two videos, we have two young people with a very good cultural background, and they took the risk of making a decision. And we need to give young people this idea, this value of the working hours. And most of the time, we have responsibilities given to other people. So we need to really make young people understand the responsibilities of what we do in a company. And it's a part of responsibilities of the managers so that the decision-making process is given also in the young people that we have in our companies. Now we move to another topic because in 1 week companies will start working again, schools will open again. So we are coming from months where our life has been revolutionized. So we can see that people are going back to work or to school. At international level, people and companies are trying to call their people, their employees, into their offices. And this is my question. What will the future, the office of the future will be? So this is what I asked to one of the CEO of the architecture studios in Milan. Let's say that the office with a lot of people has no more sense. People are looking for comfort that they didn't used to have. They found it when they were at home, the possibility to focus, to work together when needed. So let's say that the office should become like a series of different spaces that can generate suggestions and ideas. Companies are asking for, let's say, they are asking how to have people back into office and have people engaged to what they have to do and work together. And on the other side, they are asking for technologies and systems in order to work remotely. So we created an app that is called Desktop so that people can book their place and they can track the movement of their employees. I really cannot understand what the office of the post-COVID will be. I think that it will be connected with the atmosphere. We have a research unit that is looking that is researching the neurosciences and how the spaces can generate some emotions, something, and this is the trend that we'll see for the future. So working together, spaces like libraries where there will have we have always seen as a space where people work together but in silence, spaces where people can relax, spaces dedicated to let's say agile working where we have big whiteboards, and we still are looking for some solutions that could be satisfying that really give the same experience in the video conferencing as well as in presence. I think that we will always have someone connected and someone in presence, and those who are not in presence still suffer from the distance. So we will have new technologies that will try to solve this gap. How will it be possible for technology not to really suffocate the collaboration? Let's say that the division of work at home, the individualization of work at home, I think is something that has social consequences that are important. And therefore, the idea of a community that is losing the meeting area, I think this is something that we need to tackle and to solve. In addition, I think that there is the willingness to find solutions, and the pandemic taught us to fight for solution. Maybe we need to look for the harder road, but at the same time, we need to feel the community. Are you calling back the employees? Do you still have a lot of employees in smart working? We have about 70% of our employees are still working remotely, while all the operational employees are still already working. So we are, let's say, reviewing offices. Let's say that we are trying to find a new concept of space, and the social aspect is very important. So to make a good decision, you need to have data on one side, but you also need the social aspect. So, Mr. Zanzanica, we need to have the soft skills, so the capacity, the ability to have a relationship. And this type of skill is essential in any application. Being able to adapt to change and being able to create a relationship with your employees, then it's important. So you need people. So companies are requiring these skills. And another interesting thing is that these skills are required not only for the jobs where you expect to have this relational aspect, but there are other jobs. Like the dean said, we need to overcome the barriers that the university teachers still have, because we still have the scientific sectors, and we hope that this is going to end. But the ability to create a relationship with the other, also in a very specialized technical jobs, this is still present. In computer science, we have the character skills reach about 40%. We respect the technical skills. Job applications are like that, something that we haven't seen before. So these factors cannot be taught at university, even in post-graduation courses. I think that we can actually create a training context, educational context, where students can learn. We can create situations where students can learn to communicate, learn to be together. The remote teaching for university has been the answer to the pandemic emergency, but for sure it was not the best solution. And this was not covering completely the role of university. What was missing, the relationship between teachers and students, but also between students, because we learn a lot with the dialogue with your peers. This is essential because once you go into the working context, you need to have people that can dialogue, that can communicate, that can be part of a team. If they don't learn that from school, from university, this is impossible. And I think working with a constant exchange between colleagues is essential and is, let's say, and it needs moments where students can experience that. So let's say that in the near future, you will have students coming back. Sant'Anna is never closed down because we work with the students residing in the school, and therefore we have never closed. And this was a privilege for our students. This is for sure. It was hard because we had cases and we have double rooms. You can imagine the problems we had to face, but for them, for the students, this was a privilege. And other students from other universities, it was very difficult. The remote teaching was really, really difficult, and for some created some psychological issues. To conclude, let's go back to the dialogue between Mr. Violante and Mr. Cingolani. And this is going to give some advice to the parents. So how students and parents understand what to do in order to find a job. Where do they learn this? Let's say that in order to learn this, they should be into a book, coded and taught. And this is not happening because even the teacher, even if we don't know whether a teacher like that could exist, but we should let's say, change our viewpoint and change from the old-fashioned book. Now we no longer have books because we no longer have time to write these books. Therefore, the essential aspect for new generation, we need to have the mindset ready to adapt. So it's a kind of permanent learning. So they need to be ready to learn. We're coming from a society where you learned something, you would analyze, you would write in text, books, and the following generations would study what was written. I think that we should have the Ministry of Future, and I think not only Twitter, but like the United States, who have always been pioneers for anything. They have agencies doing analysis like this, but the future is not being treated as the essential element of a society. the CIO, the head of the innovation office, the group of people that should analyze the future could, let's say, find the signals, the ideas, and transfer that to schools so that people can learn the type of evolution so that you have a society that is ready for innovation. Then nobody will have time to write a book, because by the time you write the book, things have changed. And I think that Mr. Cingolani will be our minister for the future. Maybe it's going to be an innovation. Just to close, do you share this worry? Will you create in your company responsible for the future? I think that young people should choose by passion. If I look at my past experience, I have never chosen whatever I've done with what the future. Actually, if I had done that, I would have made the wrong decision. So let's say that you need to be aware that you need to be flexible. You need to be ready for change. Dean, I do agree with what has just been said. I think that we need to choose by passion and be open and listen and have a dialogue constantly. A lot of successful people, if we look at their history, they changed a lot. They started by doing something, and then they moved to something else. Someone else maybe started with some type of studies, and then in the end they are doing something completely different. I think life is really typical. It's really characterized by these things. So the best thing is trying to understand what the world is asking to us and what we can give to the world. I think that the experience in the university is essential so that we can imagine the future. I think that teachers at university are essential for the future. Mr. Mezzanzanica, what do you think? I think knowledge is essential, as we said. Making knowledge available is essential because most of the time people don't know what is actually happening. And I think this is a relevant, remarkable task the university has in collaboration with businesses so that knowledge is available to everyone. The second aspect, and something I could see over the last few days, is the entrepreneurship ability of some people. So I think that we had people taking these ideas into practice, and I think this is essential. Let's say that we need to give value to the young and do not impose to young people what we want. I've always been stricken by the fact that I was a person that was a professor of statistics, and he wrote a text by Marco Martini. Job is not only a position, but a path with unforeseeable things. Having a place where you can be educated to this, then it's fundamental for the future. That's making the difference. And this is something that we have been saying the last few days. And this is something that we have seen. And I think that we shared a lot of ideas. So we're almost at the end. So thanks to Mrs. Nuti, Dean of the Institute of Sant'Anna in Pisa, Mr. Tomasi, the CEO of Autostrade per l'Italia, and then Mr. Mezzanzanica. Tomorrow, PNRR and work. So it's clear what we're talking about. So we'll be meeting at 7 p.m. tomorrow, streaming online on the meeting website. So you'll find a lot of more material. on the website of Repubblica and the website of the Foundation for Subsidiarity. So I would like to remind you that the meeting needs your contribution, your support, but part will be given to a welcome house for young children coming from difficult situations. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.